Hi, this is Tony at Cover. I'm speaking to Thomas Kieck, Business Development Director at TIAL Technologies. Thomas, it's been a while. Thank you very much for your time. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. It certainly has been a long time. Thank you for the opportunity to chat this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we going to do over time a few interviews? We've set a series around this, which is great to unpack things a bit more in depth than just one sort of 8-minute session. So thanks for making yourself available for that. So we're going to start off with a little bit setting the scene around the technology environment, etc. And yeah, just to get some of your views about what does a modern revolutionized short-term insurance administration platform look like in 2025? Things change so fast. How does it create value not only for the brokers and UMAs, but also for the end customer? How do you bring all of that together?
Yeah, it's obviously been the last few years have been quite challenging, especially with new technologies like AI and machine learning coming onto the scene. The landscape has changed substantially in the last 25 years since we've been operating, be it from a product provider or the actual technology stack that is available. We try our best to enable our clients, be it the UMA or the broker, to add value to the customer in the end. And the customer nowadays is quite fussy. They want to be able to buy insurance any time of night or day, irrespective of whether there's a person on the other end of the line. So it's certainly become a lot more omni-channel from a sales point of view. And then the clients want the ability to be able to do self-service. So the platform has evolved over the years to be able to do that.
So you talk about over the years, and you guys have been around for 25 years now. So you've built up quite an insight into the industry and how the industry has evolved itself. If you now look back over those 25 years, what has changed fundamentally since you started all those years ago?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of changes, especially on the regulatory front with the FSCA, where they are now compared to where 25 years ago. It's chalk and cheese. In the past, brokers and UMAs, and even the insurers to a large extent, had free rein as to the products they provided. And within that, the fee structures could be quite scary at times for what were, and then the person suffering the most was the end user. So I understand where the FSCA has come from in terms of adding that regulation. Unfortunately, it's added a huge regulatory burden onto the brokers.
Mm.
And that's where the systems have had to evolve, because we've had to provide ways of our clients being able to prove that they are compliant with the FSCA regulation. And on top of that, the actual technology stack has changed dramatically over the last 25 years from what used to be heavy clients and all applications running on individual PCs or laptops within the environments is now all
Yeah.
pretty much web-based and software as a service. So from that side, it's also been a huge evolutionary change over the 25 years.
You guys operate from Mauritius as well, which I think it's probably a great idea because Mauritius is such a nice country to go to. I think that's a good plus, but there must be some learnings that you have crossover from there to here and maybe from here to there. Any specific things that you think that benefited you from doing this?
Absolutely. Obviously, the South African insurance market is very mature and it's evolved substantially and it's very complicated. When we first got to Mauritius, it was interesting to see how, without sounding negative, how simple the insurance market is. Their products are basic, and then the infrastructure is very far behind South Africa. So it's been an interesting journey to see where we can add value within that market, just in terms of automation. However, having said that, the basic systems that we do provide are probably overcomplicated for that particular environment. So we've had to simplify our interfaces for that particular market.
And how do you, so maybe just looking a little bit more holistically, how do you ensure that clients build, how shall I put it, a solid foundation to run the system off because of things changing so fast? I suppose that foundation of data integrity, resilient admin cores, API first design, all of those sort of things needs to be adaptable and needs to be able to receive fast changing things, new innovations, etc. How do you get that right when it's so uncertain how things are going to change?
Yeah, so all we've done over the years is made sure that our core database, the fundamentals around that are sound and fairly agile in terms of being able to adjust in terms of new fields and requirements there. And then we've built an API stack that sits on top of that, which allows us to then interface with multiple systems, allowing pretty much our clients to choose how they interface with their data. So it's not, you're not locked into a single interface anymore. You now have an API stack that allows you to interrogate that data or get that data out in a format that you require. And that, in terms across the two markets, has allowed us to pretty much meet all their requirements in terms of detailed data or summaries.
And do you do a lot of blue sky thinking, trying to see where things are going, mapping a potential or possible future?
Yeah, we try and stay ahead. We do belong to certain Gartner groups so we try and stay up to date with what's happening in the rest of the world. And then South Africa is very unique in our challenges and our requirements. So to try and stay there, yeah, we try and keep our finger on the pulse. We work very closely with our client base to determine the direction of the way the software is going.
Yeah. Now, Thomas, going over onto the second part of this conversation, we're talking about trying to keep your clients also into, or take them with you into the future, training, collaboration, making sure they stay future fit, etc. How critical is training in getting them to really maximize the value that they get from the technology?
Absolutely, it's vital. So we've got an academy within TIAL that allows the users, or that guides the users through the system and where they can add value to their customers, as well as to maximize the efficiencies that they get from the system. And that's a combination of videos, screenshots, PDFs, online training, and we actually rate our users. We're about to approach to get CPD points for the training that they do within the system, and it will allow us to rate our end users so that their management can manage their users effectively within the system. We also have a fairly good online presence on social media, which highlights features and tips and tricks, and then a monthly newsletter which keeps the users informed of how the system is growing and any new additional technology that has been released. Obviously, that changes so rapidly, especially now with AI. We're trying to leverage that technology within our own environment in terms of allowing users to do natural language processing on our training material, and along with that, the insurer documentation. So if they're stuck on a particular section within that, they can ask an English question, and then the AI will actually answer that question, taking into account the insurer's wording, training material, and the likes. So it's an intelligent answer, not just a pop-up help screen that somebody wrote many years ago.
Ah, brilliant, brilliant. Yeah. I think there's a bit of a debate around whether technology leads innovation or whether client needs leads innovation. But it's probably like a bit of a dance between the two. And in your case, what sort of collaboration do you have with your main client, which is the insurer or broker, to get input on potential changes and developments, innovations, etc.?
Yes, it's driven from two ways. Obviously, there's always the regulatory and that sort of stuff that comes through from the regulators and SASRIA and that likes. So that we just pass on to the end user. And then the way our company is structured, each client has a account manager that meets regularly, or at least twice a month, with the clients within a forum where they can discuss their requirements, what they see, and we will discuss the technology requirements from our side, or the potential for new technologies like using WhatsApp within the application or anything like that, and machine learning and artificial intelligence. So the forums are constantly there. And then within TIAL, we have a change approval board that looks at all the discussions from the various clients, and we will highlight what we believe is the best way to go forward, and we'll communicate that to our client base in terms of technology coming over the next 6 months to a year, not longer.
Okay. In the Tech Fest our Tech Fest recently, one of the things that came out there was that customers compare their experience working with insurers to banks and retailers. You alluded to that earlier on. Customers are getting quite demanding in what they want. And some of these retailers and banks are pretty good at their technology journeys, their user experience, etc. How do you help insurers to try and stay with that need of the client, that digital journey, removing the friction, designing intuitive journeys, etc.? What is your process for that?
Yes, obviously a lot of it's driven around business rules where the actual front end, be it omni-channel, doesn't matter where the end user is coming from, there's certain business rules that will drive that interaction, allowing the insurer not to have manual involvement so that the actual journey for the client is as smooth as possible. And only that the exceptions would then get pulled out for review by a manual person within an insurer, similar to being able to do anything. And then to make functionality available at any time via any front end so that the client doesn't have to phone a broker anymore. The broker system itself will enable the client to initiate changes as far as possible, or even make the changes where possible, and do the first notifications of loss at any time, not having to wait for a broker to send a form where it's all driven by the user, the end user, the client. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, in the environment today, we spoke about innovation, or we spoke about clients driving innovation, those sort of things. We don't just talk about personalization. Now, companies like yourselves are talking about hyper-personalization, and you have to combine that now with a new type of client coming on board, young people, very digitally savvy, living in a digital world. How do you bring those things together to hyper-personalize, to stay close to that client, but also to try and stay away from imposing on clients, breaching that client confidentiality, privacy, etc.? Difficult one to match.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, insurance in the past has been one size fits all. If you insure a car, that's what you've got. That is rapidly changing. And especially if we take IoT devices in houses, in cars, that allows insurers to collect so much more data on an individual, and based on that, customize be it their car insurance, their home insurance, whatever it is specific to that individual's habits. And as you mentioned, it's an extremely fine line between knowing too much about an individual versus hyper-personalizing his insurance cover. Anything that is used within that decision-making process, the end user, the client, has to be aware of what you're using the data for. Otherwise, I think that trust relationship would be gone very quickly.
And I think that probably goes for any business, not just for insurance, but insurance relying on so much of a distribution function. I suppose it's very important for them to keep that in mind.
And there's so many factors in an individual that could affect his insurance premiums or behavior patterns. I think disclosure is of utmost importance if you're using any data relating to an individual, that he is aware that could affect his insurance positively or negatively.
Yeah. No. And I mean, it is super important to use that data because the clients benefit from it, essentially.
Absolutely.
If it's used correctly. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. At 99% of the time, it should be in the client's favor rather than being used against him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks, Thomas. Okay, part 3, we're looking at the feature of short-term insurance administration. It's a tough one. We've spoken a bit about it. And I think the future looks bright, as they say.
Are you plugging an insurer?
But no, let me not go down that route. But we've had some of those discussions where we have sentences and every sentence contains the name of an insurer, and it actually works out. But No, and also referring back to the Tech Fest, Elliot Schwartz, marketing guru, he challenged the industry to avoid being dedicated followers of fashion, which I thought was quite a good statement because we see that so often with fancy little APIs and apps and stuff and everybody jumping on the bandwagon. He pushed us to focus on strategic clarity. Tech should enable reinvention, not just efficiency. How do you help your clients avoid the trap of chasing fashion, the shiny tools, and instead build long-term sustainable value?
Yeah, absolutely. We all saw it a few years ago where every insurer, every broker had an app just for the sake of having an app. Didn't actually provide much functionality or no rich functionality to the client. So I think it's very important that whatever is built with the actual client in mind and how you facilitate their interaction with the insurer. Insurance is generally a grudge buy, so you're already on the back foot. So to make that as simple as possible and to provide that hyper personalization is probably the biggest step forward. So where the client feels that you have his interest at heart rather than just having to have insurance for the sake of having insurance. And then
And
obviously data,
no, go for it.
the more data you have on a particular individual or company, the better you can serve their purpose or let them find insights into their behaviors that will influence their insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that with many insurers moving closer and closer to bringing all of the different products and the data together to share across the business divisions, the
Correct.
impact of that
Yeah,
knowledge.
obviously one of the leading insurers here is very good at getting a whole vision of their client across their different business units, which is very important because I think
Yeah,
one would influence behavior in another sphere of their business.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And how do you see the role of the administration system as it evolves from a back office enabler to almost a silent orchestrator of hyper personalized, seamless client experience?
Yeah, rather than being a back end, the new systems have to be in the face of the user in a pleasant way, just so that it's almost a gamification of insurance as well. So that the user wants to interact with his insurer. He wants to see where he can save money on his premiums or reduce his risks overall.
We we it emphasized that the future of productivity lies in interrogation of the data or integration of the data, automation, single view of the client, as you mentioned, some insurers already doing. How is TIAL enabling the single vision intelligently and behind the scenes without somebody actually having to go and try and do that themselves on the system?
Yeah, we're tackling it in a number of ways. The first is by an API stack so that we can interact with other systems or other databases. And similarly, we'll make our data available to other systems. And then the second approach is through large language models where we can combine these disparate sources of data into something that is a lot more intelligent and a lot more, let's say, searchable, where you can find trends on particular clients or risks within the market.
And when you look at that journey, etc., you've got insurers, brokers, and advisors, and then you've got the end client. Do you keep them all in mind when you design and when you build?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously they all play a part in the life cycle of a particular policy. And ultimately all three or all the individuals or all the role players involved want to make the experience for the end user as seamless and as pleasant as possible. You want to build loyalty and you want to build trust. And part of that is to make sure that along the journey between the insurer, the broker or the administrator, that ultimately the end user is the person that is in focus here to make their journey as pleasant as possible.
And what do you see would define success for you as TIAL into the future?
If we can retain our clients and our clients can retain their customers, I think we're succeeding on the journey. where our clients have customer loyalty. We've got to play a big part in that, enabling them to provide the service that their clients want.
And maybe in a closing question, for you personally, what is the most exciting thing at the moment in your world?
It's definitely got to be the potential of AI. You've got to look past the hallucinations, whatever, but I think we're only at the beginning of AI, and what we can get out of it in the future, I think it's going to be mind-blowing. We just got to make sure that we adopt it and apply it ethically, and then, it will be a pleasant and interesting journey.
Do you go down that rabbit hole often?
I do.
Experience?
Yep. And there's lots of rabbit holes and there's lots of potential pitfalls, but I think with the right application, agentic AI applied correctly is definitely where we are headed in the next few years.
Do you think we're able to keep up with how fast it's changing?
Great question. No. So I think it's very difficult to choose a specific model or specific architecture at the moment because they're all going in different directions and very rapidly. So I think it's just, at the moment, it's just to keep a sort of distance view on it before heading down a particular technology or particular large language model.
I had a conversation with a good friend of mine who has a big business that's based on a tech platform. And we were talking about the democratization of technology and how AI is completely democratizing it, which is part of probably the challenge of why it's evolving so fast, is because so many people who have never played with innovating on technology is now actually doing that.
Absolutely.
Unexpected.
Our technical skills of the past are now being replaced by being able to speak English almost. There are still complex things where programmers will have a role, but to create a website or a user interface with basic stuff, anybody can do that now.
We at a place yet where we are not training AI, but AI is training us.
I hope not yet, but it is a fine line as to, I think, unfortunately, the more people are using AI, the less we are thinking critically about stuff. It's fantastic for answering simple questions, but when you actually take creativity, is anything that is created by AI true creativity, or is it just regurgitating something that's been created before by using a pattern? That's an interesting philosophical debate around creativity. Yeah.
Thomas, thank you so much. It was great chatting to you.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for the opportunity. Yep, perfect.